Hello, everybody. Hi, Helen. Welcome. It's great to see you. There was a little problem this morning. Sebastian mentioned that the time on the video was wrong. I'm sorry about that. It said 8 o'clock in the morning on YouTube, but in fact, of course, it's 8 o'clock in the evening. So I'm sorry about the confusion, and I hope Sebastian and CB Web can join us. So I'm very sorry about that. So it's great to see some people here. Hello, L'Atelier. Thank you for coming. Thanks, Hélène. It's great to see some familiar faces and old friends from all the webinars. So this is the last webinar for a few weeks. We're going to take a break, probably until the end of May. So we will probably take a break for 2 weeks. So it's great to have some people here, and maybe we can discuss future plans and future webinars at the end. So this is the end of a little series, and it's been really enjoyable. And I want to say thank you to all the people who came along. It's been great to have you. So if you're here, just like Hélène and L'Atelier, send me a little message just to say hello. It's good to know that there are some people here, and we will get started soon. Hello, Sylvain. Great to see you. Thank you for coming. Florence, thank you for coming too. It's great to see you. So, yes, a lot of familiar faces. Still some people arriving. Sorry about the confusion with the time this morning, but it's great to see some people here anyway. So today's webinar is all about news and journalism and media. So maybe we have a few journalists here. So if there are any journalists here, please say hello. And hello, Sonia. Great to see you. Great. My first question, just to get us started, is what is the big news story at the moment in France? So if you check the news websites or on TV or in the newspaper, what are some of the main stories at the moment? So here in Ireland, I'm in Ireland at the moment, and the big story this evening is, yes, the new Pope. So yes, it's the same in France and Ireland. That's okay, Ellen. The Pope, exactly, the Pope. So there's a new Pope. A new Pope has been elected. Okay, so we could say a new Pope has been elected. Here we have an interesting sentence because we are using some nice vocabulary. Elected, some nice grammar, has been elected. So we have some passive voice, some present perfect. So it's good. That's the point of today's meeting, is to see about some of the vocabulary, some of the grammar we can see from the news. Yes, Latelle said already. Yes, it was very fast. I think it took just 2 days to elect the new Pope. Does anybody know anything about the new Pope? Where does he come from? What age is he? Any ideas? He's American, exactly, Ellen. You're correct. I just read that 10 minutes ago, that he is from Chicago and he lived in Peru for a long time. So yeah, he comes from the United States. Exactly. So I saw him speaking Italian and Spanish and Latin, of course, from the balcony in the Vatican. Okay. Any other big stories? Any stories that are national stories just for France? Hello, Angelique. Thank you very much for coming. You're very welcome. So are there any other big news stories at the moment? Or in recent weeks, have there been some interesting news stories? Any ideas? So I'm just going to get my slides ready. Oh. Sorry, Chrome is a little bit slow today. Okay, we have some news stories. Ellen mentioned President welcomed the chief of Syria or the leader of Syria. Be careful the difference between chef. In English, chef is just for cooking. Okay, so a chef, it's a professional cook. So the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, welcomed the chief of Syria, or you could say the leader of Syria. Okay, maybe he is also a chef. Okay, good. Latelia said trouble with mineral water. Interesting. I didn't hear anything about that. What's the trouble with the mineral water in France? Yeah, Helen said maybe he is a good chef. Syrian food, it's quite delicious, I believe so. And Florence said 8th of May is the date where you commemorate the end of the Second World War. The Second World War. Yes, so sometimes we call the 8th of May VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. Okay, so Victory in Europe Day, I believe, is today. Ireland, of course, was a neutral country in World War II, so we do not commemorate this day and we do not get a day off. In France, you are very lucky you get a day off work today. Okay, so please share any more stories you might have, or also, Latelia, I'm interested in hearing more about the trouble with mineral water if you want to share. I didn't hear anything about that. Okay. Latelia said you didn't stand up for us. Good phrasal verb, to stand up for someone. At that time, Ireland was a very young and very new country, and we did not have a lot of resources. So remember that Ireland just became independent less than 2 decades before World War II. So I don't think we would have helped a lot. But very nice use of the phrasal verb to stand up for someone. Good work. Okay. I am going to share my slides if possible. Okay, perfect. So, as you know, are brought to you by Anglify, and it's been great hosting these webinars and sharing the webinars with you. So I want to thank Anglify for that. So today's topic, listen, sorry, it's black. Okay. Yes, your cousin of Normandy, exactly. Yes, yes. Cousins with Normandy and Brittany. Okay, sorry about the little delays. Chrome is having a few problems tonight. So today's topic is news and journalism, and we're going to focus on listening and reading. I chose this topic because we have already looked at some grammar, some pronunciation, and a lot of vocabulary. So if we really think about the English language or any language, there are a few different elements: pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, reading, listening, and speaking. Okay, so here we are focusing on listening, and news and journalism and newspapers are a great resource for improving your English. Okay. So I often tell students and tell learners that if you want to learn English, if you want to learn any language, you need to do 4 things. You need to read, listen, speak, and write. So all of these 4 things will help you a lot. So I know some of you are studying at Anglify. That's great. You get a lot of reading material, listening material, opportunities to speak and write. But for people who are finished with Anglify or not studying with Anglify, you can do this independently too. So remember, you need to think about, how can I find opportunities to read and listen, speak and write. So today we're focused on reading and listening. And this is the easiest one to organize because we have a lot of resources for both reading and speaking now, thankfully. So what is news? News is information about current events. So I believe in French, you say things like actualité or something like that, or maybe info. But in English, we talk about news, okay, news. So you cannot say, I read the actuality or I watched the actuality. It doesn't make sense in English. Remember that actual has no connection to time in English. Okay, sorry, Ellen. Hopefully it's getting a little bit better now. So actualité, I think it's the French word, but in English we have the word news. An interesting thing about news is that it always is spelled with an S, okay? And it is singular noun, okay? So we say, the news is on. For example, what are you watching on TV? We will say, the news is on. We do not say, the news are on. Okay, or the news was good, the news was bad. We do not say the news were good or the news were bad. Okay, so it always finishes in S, but it is a singular noun, or it's treated as a singular noun. Okay. We also have some expressions with news, and here we use news a lot when you meet someone, maybe an old friend or a family member that you haven't seen for a while, or if you go into work and you meet your colleagues, you might say, do you have any news? Do you have any news? So this is a very common question. So when we say it, sometimes we say it very fast. So we say, do you have any news? Here in Ireland, we say, do you have any news? Okay, so do you have any news? And of course, you can answer saying, not really, no news. Or you can say, yes, guess what? Okay, so do you have any news? Yes, guess what? Okay, when we ask, do you have any news? It's not about the new pope or about something that you have seen on TV or in the newspaper. It's about something in your personal life. So, do you have any news? Yes. Guess what? I got a new job. Or, yes, I crashed my car last. We also might say, have you heard the news about? So you could say about the new pope, have you heard the news about the new pope? Or it could be something from your personal life. Have you heard the news about your neighbor, your cousin, your colleague? So those are a few little expressions with news, with the word news. Now, subject matters when it comes to news. What are some of the topics that are often featured on the news? So we have politics, natural disasters, business or finance, environment, weather, sport, culture and entertainment, human interest. Okay. Human interest refers to stories that people are generally interested in. It might be about some local news or some strange story that happened to a person. Okay, human interest. So, for example, I read a news story last week, a human interest news story about a very unlucky person who was struck by lightning. So when there's a storm, the lightning hit the person or struck the person. Okay, so it's and thankfully he survived. So that's an example of a human interest story. Now, what about some sources of news? So we have newspapers. Sometimes for short, we say the papers. TV, radio, podcasts, and social media are some examples of sources of news. So where you get news from. Sometimes for short, when the context is clear, we don't say newspaper, we just say paper. Did you buy the paper? Have you read the paper? It's another option when the context is clear. By the way, where can you buy newspapers and magazines? You can buy newspapers and magazines in newsagents. Okay, so shops that sell newspapers, magazines, cigarettes, chocolate, and small things like that. In English, we often call. So let's start with newspapers. So newspapers can be in print, okay, so physical, or digital format, online. Important vocabulary for newspapers is the headlines. So the headline is the big piece of writing at the top, the headline. So sometimes when you're in the shop, in the newsagents, you look at the headlines. Anything interesting? This one. Or when you're reading the newspaper, first you read the headlines, and then you select what article you want to read. So the headline, the big writing at the top, and the article is just underneath. And of course, with newspapers, advertising is important. So in order to make money, the newspapers, of course, have a price. You can buy the newspaper, but they also make money from advertising. By the way, how much does a newspaper cost in France? How much does a newspaper cost in France? So in Ireland, most newspapers cost about €2.50. So it varies because some newspapers are cheaper and some newspapers are more expensive. But I think the average price is about €2.50. Is it similar in France, or more expensive or cheaper? So how much do the newspapers cost in France? Can you tell me? Now, as I said, some newspapers are more expensive than others, and they can be different sizes. So, okay, so Florence says they are more expensive in France. Okay, and Latelier says no idea. Okay. Now, a lot of people, yeah, Ellen says similar. Now, a lot of people don't buy the print newspapers as much because you have the digital newspaper. Yeah, it depends on the newspaper. But sometimes with the digital newspapers, there is a paywall. A paywall is something that blocks your entrance to the website until you pay. So sometimes some of the newspapers have a paywall, which means you need to pay before you can access the newspaper. So Le Pont, it's €8.9. Wow, €8.90. That's very expensive, Florence. Okay. So the first type of newspapers that we have here in Ireland and in the UK are called tabloids. Okay. Le Pont, it's more of a magazine. Okay. So tabloids. So a tabloid, hebdo. So a magazine, yes, we would call it a magazine. Okay, so a tabloid is a smaller newspaper. It's more compact in size. So you can see it's approximately 28 by 43 centimeters. So it's a little bit similar to the size of a folder. And sometimes we also call these newspapers red tops because the title is written with red. Okay, so Paris Normandy is about €1.60. West France, hello, Mary. West France, it's €1.30. Okay, yeah, similar to Ireland. So a tabloid is a smaller newspaper. And if you look at this tabloid, you can see that the stories are a little bit strange. So this headline is Girl Eats 4,000 Washing Up Sponges. Okay, so it's a very weird, bizarre story. It's not very serious. So usually the tabloids focus more on sensational stories that are not really serious. So sometimes the tabloids have a lot of sensational stories. They have a lot of celebrity gossip. And some people would say they have a lot of trashy stories. Okay, trashy stories. So for example, Dragon's Den Duncan divorces. So it's kind of gossip. It's not really serious in any way. So those are the tabloids or red tops. Now, in contrast to that, we have broadsheets. Let me show you a broadsheet. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me, guys? Okay, sorry about the delay. Okay. Yes, you can hear me. Okay. So the broadsheet is a longer newspaper. So great, thank you. So the broadsheet is about 60 or almost 60 centimeters long and 38 centimeters across. You can see that it is more serious and it has more in-depth articles. Okay, so in-depth. So we have the adjective deep and the noun depth. So in depth means that the story goes into more detail. Okay. So this week I did a little bit of research and I found some bizarre headlines on the news, some bizarre stories on the news. So I've typed up 4 newspaper headlines and I want you to read them and see, can you guess what word is missing from the headline? So the first one is climber rescued on Mount Fuji returns for has to be rescued again. So why do you think the rescued climber returned to Mount Fuji? Any ideas? So this is a true story and it was in the newspaper last week. Florence, you are correct. Did you read this story, Florence? So you are correct. He returned for his mobile phone. So a climber, a student, climbed Mount Fuji, and he got into some difficulty, and he had to be rescued. When he was rescued, he realized that he had forgotten his mobile phone, so he returned for it and had to be rescued again. Next one. Woman spends 10K, so we can say 10K or $10,000 on surgery to look like a regrets it. Okay, so Florence said she heard that story on the radio. Yeah, it's crazy. So woman spends 10K on surgery to look like a regrets it. So Latelier says to look like a Barbie. Good guess, but it's not correct. Okay. Any ideas what the woman wanted to look like? Ellen said a cat. Yes, Ellen and Florence too. You are correct. So a woman recently spent $10,000 on surgery to look like a cat, and now she said she regrets it. Next one. Australian radio secretly used an host for 6 months. So nobody noticed, but an Australian radio station was secretly using a particular type of radio host for 6 months. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. Any ideas? By the way, a little clue here is that they use an. An. So what could it be in the space? We know that it has to start with a vowel sound. Okay. So Australian radio secretly used an host for 6 months. Any ideas? Okay, think about it. And the next one is Dutch museum destroyed 46 precious. What could it be? What could it be? Dutch museum destroyed 46 precious. Ellen said Australian radio secretly used an igloo host. No, Ellen, not an igloo host. Sylvain, you have it. Australian radio secretly used an AI host. AI, artificial intelligence. Be careful. In French, a lot of people say IA, okay? But remember in English, AI, artificial intelligence. So Australian radio secretly used an AI host for 6 months. And the last one, Dutch museum destroyed 46 precious paintings, including a painting by Andy Warhol. So it's a big mistake. Okay, so I have some examples of those headlines. Sorry, it's a little bit slow to change. So here you can see student rescued from mountain twice in 4 days after going back to find his phone. The man identified by police only as a 27-year-old Chinese student developed altitude sickness twice after climbing during the peak's off-season. And Australian radio station secretly used an AI host for 6 months. Workdays with Dai broadcast for 6 months before listeners began questioning the host's true identity. Okay. Yes, Florence, a very expensive mistake. Okay, good. Very good. So we got most of those. I want to look at advertising through the ages. So as I mentioned, advertising is very important for newspapers. So advertising, it's when you want to sell a product or to promote a product, or yes, it's when you want to maybe advertise a vacant job position. So advertising is a very important thing for newspapers and magazines. So Hélène said in France, it's totally forbidden and punished by the law. Yeah, you could say, and punished severely, Hélène. It's punished severely. punished severely by the law. Okay. Hardly, Ellen and everyone, is a very interesting adverb because hardly in English, it's strange. It has nothing to do with hard. Hardly means almost not. So, for example, if you say, "Do you know your neighbor?" And I say, "I hardly know him." I hardly know him means I almost do not know him. Okay, I hardly know him. Or, "Did you eat a lot of food today?" No, I ate hardly anything. So we often use hardly anything. Okay, hardly anything. Great. Okay, thank you for the sentence. And that gives us some nice vocabulary to work on. So thank you very much for that, Ellen. So advertising through the ages. I want to look at some advertisements that I found. These were some of the most creative advertisements from newspapers and magazines in recent years that I could find. So you can see this advertisement is for the Van Gogh Museum Cafe. Can anybody explain this advertisement? Why is it clever? So it's for the Van Gogh Museum Cafe, and it's in Amsterdam. Yeah, yes, good. Thank you, Ellen. Yes, it is interesting. So thank you for introducing that. L'Atelier says, it's for the cut ears. Exactly. Remember that Van Gogh is famous because he cut off one of his ears. He cut off. Cut, it's an irregular verb. So in the past simple, cut. So cut. It doesn't change. So Van Gogh cut off one of his ears. So this teacup or coffee cup reminds us of the cut off ear. It's very clever. Do you like this advertisement?